You learned early how to read a room without making a sound. At 6, maybe 7, you could feel the temperature of a moment before anyone spoke. You knew when to disappear. You knew when to smile. You knew when your feelings would be too much for the space you were in. So you folded them inward, quietly, carefully. You became good at being easy, good at not needing, good at hiding the parts of you that wanted comfort. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking for it. What happens to a child who learns that their feelings are safest when no one can see them?
This is not weakness. This is about adaptation. When your emotions were ignored, minimized, or overwhelmed the people around you, your nervous system learned a rule. Connection requires containment. So, you contained yourself. This is emotional neglect. Not always loud, not always obvious. Sometimes it looked like being left alone too long. Sometimes it looked like praise only when you performed. Your attachment system adjusted. Your body learned to stay alert. Your brain learned to scan for safety. You became attuned to others while becoming disconnected from yourself. This is how a child survives when emotional presence is inconsistent. You learned to disappear in plain sight.
You became observant. You learned the moods before the words. You learned to anticipate needs that were never spoken. You learned that being low maintenance kept you safe. So you wore masks. The good child, the easy child, the mature one. You learned to regulate everyone else while abandoning your own inner signals. Invisibility became intelligence. Silence became strategy. You did not lose your feelings. You hid them where they could not be rejected.
Now you are older, and everyone calls you strong, independent, reliable. But inside, relationships feel exhausting. You give before you are asked. You wait to be chosen instead of choosing. You feel deeply, but struggle to name what you feel. You disconnect when closeness appears, or you overextend until you disappear again. Loneliness follows you even when you are not alone. Your body is tired from decades of holding it all together. There is grief here. Not dramatic, not loud. The grief of not being met. The grief of needing comfort and learning not to ask. The grief of becoming self-sufficient too early. Nothing was wrong with your needs. They were simply unanswered. And that loss deserves to be seen. Healing does not begin with fixing. It begins with staying. Staying with sensations you were never allowed to have. Witnessing the child who learned to disappear. Letting the feelings come without managing them. Presence is the repair. Truth is the medicine. This is slow. This is honest. This is how safety is rebuilt from the inside. You were never broken. You were brilliant. You adapted in the only ways available to you. And now, you get to choose something different. Not by becoming louder, but by becoming truer. The child who hid is still here, waiting to be met. This time, by you.